Hello everyone, I'm Brian. Today I'm reacting to The Ultimate Secret of I hope I said that right. OM in all capitals. Om Swami Sarvapriyananda. So I remember I can't remember I remember that I can't remember who it was, but I think it was Swami Sarvapriyananda that talks about and I believe, or is it Sadhguru? But they mimicked the sound and it was genuinely soothing, and for some weird reason I thought I want a 10-hour loop of that, but I don't know, but just to I don't know if there's something to it. Maybe just me, maybe it's just that moment, maybe I was feeling something, I don't know, and I don't know if that's even the sound. But anyways, let's go ahead and get started. Vedanta Center of Phoenix. Well, they're posting out their address there, so...
Let me start with a short prayer from the Upanishads, and then we'll get into the subject. Om Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Om, peace, peace, peace.
Real quick, I know he's very consistent with that. I was thinking that, and I've assumed that the first part was, I'm guessing, Hindi, a language, and then he's translating it, and the next part is, I just want to confirm that. That's what I'm assuming. I think it's correct, because from hearing from the other language to this one, and hearing certain words like Shanti, 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 and it's Om, Shanti, 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 then it says Om, peace, peace, peace. So verbatim, it sounds about right, so I'm assuming he's translating it here as well. Just to make sure, I don't know.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me here. To the organizers, I owe a special debt of gratitude for putting this program together. Pranams to revered Swamiji Shankaranji, who's present here. The subject that we have this morning it's called The Secret of Om. So I'll get into that eventually, but first let me say what a wonderful place Sedona is. I come from the Vedanta Society of New York. Swami Vivekananda was the person who really brought Vedanta to the West in 1893 in the World Parliament of Religions. And in 1894, the very next year, he started the first Vedanta Society in New York. So that's where I'm coming from right now. And it's closed in summer. So the monk there travels in summer, giving talks in different parts of the United States. When people knew that I'm going to come to Sedona, everybody kept telling me, "Oh, you'll love it. It's wonderful. It's fantastic."
It's
and
hot.
I was thinking, it's a desert.
Yeah.
How good could it be?
Real quick though, does he still do that today? I don't know. That's interesting. I didn't realize he traveled during the summer. If so, wonder where. I need to go to his website and see if. I doubt he'll ever travel to my area, because there is no. I don't live in a state that's very densely populated at all. Like the most densely populated city in my state is considered to be probably a tiny town in bigger states.
I didn't say anything to anybody, not to hurt their feelings, but then when we just entered Sedona, it was remarkable. It's magical, and I was thinking how lucky you people are who stay here. You know, you tend to get used to a place when you stay there. You have to see it with fresh eyes, with the kids' eyes, or you're seeing it for the first time. So it's beautiful, it's magnificent, it's magical, and it's spiritual. I sensed it immediately. People have told me, maybe a little bit of conditioning working there. People have told me that it's spiritual, but I do sense it. It was almost like crossing a barrier. As you enter the precincts of this area, you feel the vibration here. So yes, I do believe that there are special places, special times, which I won't say they are more spiritual than others, but they seem to channel or manifest spirituality more than others. That is true.
Interesting. He said a vibration. That's something that Sadhguru talks about too. I think Sadhguru has spoken about it a bit more times. Again, it could be just I'm missing it from Lakhani, missing it from Tarat Madanda, but again, maybe it's also the word Om is a special type vibration. I think Sadhguru has said that, but I'm wondering if there's something more to vibrations in Hinduism or Advaita Vedanta itself.
It's more manifest in certain places. Sedona, I believe, is one of them.
Or it's just he happens to say that.
So once again, I'm very happy to be here with all of you. The subject I want to speak about here today is Vedanta. So many people know about it, especially if you are spiritual, if you are new agey in any way. Though I find many people in the West, in the United States and in Europe, they think Vendata. Is it the Vendata Society or something? Vedanta comes from the Vedas, the word Vedas, which is the most ancient scriptures of the Hindus. In the Vedas, towards the end of these Vedas, the final teachings of the Vedas, Vedanta literally means the end of the Veda. Anta is end, and Veda is the revealed scriptures. So the final teachings, or the highest teachings in that sense, and sometimes literally towards the end of the body of texts called the Vedas, you find these texts called Upanishads. And these Upanishads are the root texts of Vedanta. In fact, if you look for a philosophy of Hinduism, you would come to Vedanta. There are many, many schools of Vedanta. The Upanishads have been interpreted by masters through the ages. The one I will speak about, the one I represent, is called Advaita Vedanta. And the Swami there also comes from the same lineage. So Advaita Vedanta is non-dual Vedanta. And it is based on a significant figure there is Shankaracharya, where again the Swami's name Shankarananda comes from. Shankara also means Shiva, one of the forms in which God is worshipped in Hinduism. Shankaracharya lived about 1400 years ago in the south of India, and he selected 10, or some say 11 of these Upanishads to write commentaries. So basically non-dual Vedanta is overwhelmingly based on these 11 Upanishads. And among these Upanishads, there is one, the smallest among them, the most powerful among them, it's called the Mandukya Upanishad. It has only 12 mantras, the texts, only 12. It'll fit into an A4 size paper if you write it down. And yet it's the most powerful. In Bengali, which is an Indian language, they talk about, Indians like hot food, spicy food. So there are these small chilies which are really, really hot. In Bengali, they call it dhani lanka, which means a tiny chili which is really hot. This Mandukya Upanishad is like that. In the ancient Indian story of Rama, Sita, Rama, Ramayana, so there is a nice story where Rama's dedicated devotee Hanuman, who comes in the form of a huge monkey. So Hanuman asks Rama, how do I get liberation, freedom, salvation, whatever you call it, moksha in Sanskrit? And Rama says, the Mandukya Upanishad is sufficient by itself for those who seek liberation. Mandukyam ekam eva alam mumukshunam vimuktai. That's the original Sanskrit. The Mandukya Upanishad, that text, is enough by itself to confer liberation upon those who seek it. And then he goes on to say, suppose you go through the Mandukya Upanishad and you still don't get it, still not enlightened. Then Rama gives a syllabus of 108 Upanishads. So I think that's a good incentive to become liberated with this one Upanishad. And this one Upanishad, the Mandukya Upanishad, tiny in itself. It's a very powerful text. Nowadays, if you read the text, it comes embedded in a larger text called the Mandukya Karika, literally meaning verses on the Mandukya Upanishad. So Shankaracharya's guru's guru, his master's master, Gaudapada, he wrote a commentary in verse form on the Mandukya Upanishad. He included the Mandukya Upanishad in the first chapter of this book, 4 chapters. First chapter includes the Mandukya Upanishad, and then Gaudapada wrote about 215 verses on this original text, which has only 12 mantras. So that's it. That gives you the background of the source where I'm going to take this from, what I'm going to talk about this morning. Why is it called the secret of Om, the subject today? If there is one mantra, one sacred sound which is overwhelmingly symbolic of the divine, it is Om. In all the sacred traditions of India, Hinduism is wildly diverse. I sometimes am called upon to introduce Hinduism to school children or college students in their religion courses. And I say that it's difficult to summarize Hinduism because any question that you ask of Hinduism, the answer is always yes and no.
Oh, wait, what? I was thinking it was going to say it's yes.
Hindus believe in God?
No.
Yes and no. Is God with form? Yes and no. Is God male? Yes and no. God is male and female and beyond gender and so on. So all of these forms of Hinduism, but one thing common to all of them, among the few things that are common, one thing common to all of them is they all revere Om.
I was going to just confirm real quick about what he said. Yeah, whenever before getting into this and before understanding anything about Hinduism, it was really strange to say, why is there 330 million gods? That's so weird, because in Western culture, there's only ever, for the most part, one god. And if there's multi-gods like Greek or the Egyptians or Romans, it's not 330 million gods. It's usually a finite number. There's probably many more Greek gods that are not very famous or well known, but they all represent certain things, and there's a limited number of things that can be represented in the world, so there's a limited number of gods. But 330 million gods, you're representing almost every individual things, where like Romans have a god that represents Ares, war and anger and something. I don't know what he represents. War is the only thing I know, but they represent multitudes of either emotions or seasons or whatever it may be. But yeah, 330 million plus.
The mantra Om. Not just Hindus, the Buddhists, all the different flavors Buddhism comes in. Om is regarded as the highest mantra. For example, the Tibetan Buddhist mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum. So there's Om there. The Jain traditions, it's not very well known in the West. That's another strand of another religion in India, which is actually like an older contemporary of Buddhism. They also revere Om. The youngest of the religions of India, Sikhism, the Sikhs, their word term for the absolute is Ik Omkar, the one Om that stands for the transcendent. So anyway, I have sold you on the importance of Om. And as you would expect, with this wide diversity of traditions and philosophies and views, you will expect a wide diversity of interpretation of Om. What does it mean? And so many meanings have been given. Om stands for the trinity of Hinduism, Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, the creator, the preserver, the destroyer, and many meanings. The Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, which is the classic manual for meditation, it says the name of God is Om. That's Tasya Vachaka Pranava. That's a sutra. It says the name of God is Om, or the highest name of God is Om, and so on. Even Time magazine got in on the act. I remember many years ago, there was a cover story on meditation, but the cover page had Om on it. Now the deepest and the most ancient interpretation of Om in the Upanishads you can find is in the Mandukya Upanishad. In fact, the Mandukya Upanishad, which we're going to speak about today, is built around Om. So today I'm going to talk about that. the highest teachings of Hinduism in the Vedanta, and the Vedanta in its most concentrated form. You find it in the Mandukya Upanishad, and the essence of the Mandukya Upanishad is Om. All right. I still haven't started. How am I doing for time? Okay.
Yeah, no kidding.
I'll speak for a while, introduce you to it, and then we will interact. You can ask questions. What the Mandukya Upanishad says is all Vedanta, Advaita Vedanta, can be summarized in the statement that thou art. In Sanskrit, Tattvamasi. The basic insight of all Vedanta, it's a vast literature, but it can be easily expressed in one sentence. Is there's one thing that you take away from this talk, it would be this: you are that. What do you mean by that? That absolute, the ultimate reality, what we are seeking for, we are that. But then the question comes, if we are that, then why don't we know it? If I talk about a God or a divinity who is in heaven, if you ask, why can't I see God? I'm safe. I'll say because God is not here. God is in heaven, some other place. But if God is here, or that ultimate reality, whatever you talk about is here, then there's a valid question, why don't I experience it if it is right here? If I ask the question, when is God? And if the answer is after death, then again I'm safe, because you'll have to die and go to heaven and then you see God. Why can't you see God now? Because it's not now, it's then. Not here, there, not now, then the teacher is safe. If you go there and then you don't find God, you can't catch me anymore. It's too late. But Vedanta claims that absolute reality, which Vedanta calls Brahman, and the word Brahman, not Brahmin. Brahmin is a priestly class in India. Brahman means, literally it means the vast. The Sanskrit derivation, if you go to the root, it means that which expands. So the vast, literally the limitless. So that absolute, if I claim it's here, it's now, and it is you, then you have a legitimate question. That doesn't seem like it. I don't feel very absolute. I don't feel like the transcendent. I don't feel very godly. So the whole question comes, if you're claiming that, then prove it. Show it. Let me see what you mean. And that's what the Mandukya Upanishad does with Om. It says, what religions call God is our own real self. Look at the words real self. By that, it immediately implies that we do not know what we are. Swami Vivekananda, when he came here more than 100 years ago, Swami Vivekananda was the disciple of Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna was probably one of the most significant figures of Hinduism in the recent times. Now, Swami Vivekananda would say, if only you knew what you are. He would often tell his disciples in America in the late 19th century, if only you knew what you are, that thou art. The Vedantic texts express this essential teaching in sentences called great sentences or profound sentences. In Sanskrit, Mahavakya. Maha means great. Vakya means sentence. Great sentences, not in the sense of long sentences. There are a lot of those in Sanskrit. They go on and on. They can fill up literally a page with one sentence. But great in these sentences are very short, usually 2 or 3 words. 4 of them, and they all mean the same thing. It literally means you and God are one. You are the divine. So the most famous of these great sentences, it's already pretty well known in the West also. It's Tattvamasi, that thou art. It's from one of the Upanishads called the Chandogya Upanishad. Another one is also not as well known, meaning the same thing, Aham Brahmasmi. It's from the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. It literally means I am the absolute. I am Brahman, the absolute. Another one is there, Prajnanam Brahma. It's from the Aitareya Upanishad. It means this awareness which we feel right now, what you're feeling now. If you understood it, what it was, that is the absolute. This awareness is the absolute. Prajnanam Brahma. And the last of the four great sentences, Ayam Atma Brahma. This very self, Ayam means pointing towards yourself. This Atma, self, Brahma is the absolute. And this last sentence, this self is the absolute, Ayam Atma Brahma, is actually from the Mandukya Upanishad, the one which we are going to talk about today. That's all I want to say about the text itself. Now we will dive into Om.
Before he dives into that, that is quite interesting. For some odd reason, how do I say? I understood it in a little bit of a different fashion. I don't know if I understood it more or not, but the sheer fact that I was thinking along the lines of the consciousness, and again, how I explain in the three interpretations that I have: the material, the in between, and then the as far as I know from Advaita Vedanta. And that middle one, it's not the middle finger, it's the middle one, the material, the middle one, and Advaita Vedanta. It's the middle one where the consciousness is still in your mind, and the fact that everything must manifest in the consciousness in your mind. So the only way to experience it is if it manifests in the consciousness in your mind. And the fact that if it doesn't manifest there, then it doesn't exist, because, well, you don't know it then. At that point, if you're not conscious of it, then you don't know it. Therefore, it doesn't exist to you. So it goes back to that, and that's a very interesting point of view. But let's continue on. I don't know what else to say. That it was confusing to me too, but
here's the deal. The Mandukya Upanishad has its, what I said just now applies to the general Advaita Vedanta philosophy. Now the peculiar technique adopted in the Mandukya Upanishad, it's a technique of the three states of awareness. Now the three states of our mind. What do you mean by the three states of our mind? It's something that we experience every day and we pay no attention to it. We are experiencing it right now. What are the three states? Waking, dreaming, and sleeping. Dreaming is also in sleep, so we can put it in this way: waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. These are the three experiences which we have in common all our lives. Every day we are awake right now, hopefully, because Vedanta has a way of putting people to sleep. Waking, and then we fall asleep, and we dreaming, and then there is dreamless sleep, deep sleep. And then we wake up again, or we go into dreams. So these three keep cycling, and that's the story of our lives. And the Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, makes this radical claim. You don't need anything else. All you need to do is take a closer look at your daily life. And the absolute Brahman, the ultimate reality, your own reality, is right there. Discover it, and you get immortality. You are free. The prayer we did just now, lead us from darkness to light, lead us from the unreal to the real, lead us from death to immortality. Those results, you get the real, you get the light, you get immortality, freedom from death. Not in the body. The body is still going to go to its inevitable conclusion, but you realize that you are this immortal existence. Great promise. What you call moksha, what is called moksha in Hinduism, nirvana in Buddhism, salvation, or whatever you call it in different religions, that is attained. It is attainable. Vedanta in fact claims it is already attained, you don't know it. That is discovered when you investigate waking, dreaming, and deep sleep. That's why one of the things why I like Advaita so much. You see, if you take conventional religion, it depends heavily on faith. It starts with faith. There is God, and you do these things, and then you get freedom or salvation. This is what is called the path of bhakti, devotion. It's based on faith. If you are skeptic, if you are Sam Harris or Christopher Hitchens, it won't work, because you can't start with questioning. The path of devotion starts with faith. You have to have some kind of faith. The path of yoga is a path of experience, not faith. The path of yoga says to you, Patanjali Yoga for example, Faith is not so important. What is important is, do these things, these practices, these techniques of meditation, sit like this, breathe like this, meditate like this. Eventually you will have certain specific mystical experiences, extraordinary experiences called various samadhis, which will prove to you the truth of religion, of spirituality. Do you see the difference between the yogic approach and the devotional approach? The yogic approach is more of an experiential approach. It doesn't really matter what you believe or do not believe. What matters is, have you had these experiences which prove to you the truth of religion? And it's very, very appealing for our modern age, because we want proof. And Vivekananda, he made waves when he came here at the end of 19th century, and he said, religion is not belief, religion is realization. You actually have to realize God, actually have to experience God. Advaita goes a step further. Not belief, not extraordinary experience, rather ordinary experience. We will investigate into ordinary experience which we all have. Everybody has it. No matter what you believe, whether you practice meditation or not, does not matter. Ordinary experience which we already have, we will investigate that, and the absolute God, whatever you call it, will be revealed to us. So what an incredible claim. But you'll have to follow the chain of reasoning, understand, and then apply the understanding to what you are already experiencing. It will be revealed. All right.
This sounds like jnana yoga, knowledge.
Big claim.
And potential karma with action.
What's the
as
word?
well.
Put your money where your mouth is, yeah. And Americans, they're very practical people, so they have a number of phrases for this, where the rubber hits the road, walk the talk. Yes, these are the terms. All right, so I'm going to do that now. It's very direct. It's subtle, but very, very direct, immediate almost. What the Upanishad, the peculiar technique of the Mandukya Upanishad is waking, dreaming, deep sleep. It says, what it says is, consider the waking experience, then the dream experience, then the deep sleep experience. What happens in the waking experience is, in you, the consciousness, you are aware. We are all sentient. We are all aware. We are all conscious. In consciousness, we see, we experience a body, senses, and a mind is active. Look, already the language is a little different from what we normally, the way we describe it. We describe it as, I am this guy. So we start with the body. The Upanishad starts with awareness. You are aware, you are sentient, you are conscious. And what is presented to you, the waking consciousness? A body, senses, mind, and a world which you sense. We see, right now you're seeing. You hear, right now you're hearing. You taste and smell and touch. So that one consciousness flowing through the mind gives you sight, sound, smell, touch, taste. And when you look inward in the mind, there are thoughts, ideas, memories, desires. There is the ego which keeps on saying I.
Emotion.
Anger, desire, love, frustration, memory, the person. So this is what is presented to you. Are you with me? Is this not a description of our daily life? This is what we discover. There's a world out there, and I am the waker experiencing the waker's world with my senses. And then next, the Upanishad says, you fall asleep, and remember, all this analysis is from the waker's point of view. Right now we are awake and we are looking at our experiences. And how would we describe it? I, the consciousness, I lose sight of my physical body. That it is on a bed and sleeping, I completely forget it.
I'm sorry, I was thinking while I was listening, which is kind of hard to do, because you're very good at doing one thing, not necessarily at two. But the one thing I was trying to think of was the fact that I was thinking, he was talking about his senses. I was thinking about a person who, say, can't hear, who's deaf, and the fact of how do you explain that? How do you explain to someone that, you know, they can't experience sound? Sound doesn't exist for them, and it doesn't manifest in consciousness. So while sound may be occurring, it is not manifesting in their consciousness, so therefore they are not aware of it because of their hearing, they're deaf. So I don't know. I was thinking about that, like just ways of explaining this to someone who's basically, I guess, a Westerner in some sense. Maybe even for my own satisfaction, as to when you talk about everything manifesting in again that middle one. About everything manifesting in your consciousness, and that ties in a little bit to the Advaita Vedanta, where everything is consciousness. The only leap here is the fact that saying that everything is consciousness, which does also say yes, but this middle one says that it's the consciousness in your mind. Again, those two things is the two things that I kind of I guess I just have those three interpretations, and all of them are very valid, and none of them so far are proven necessarily false. I haven't found falsehoods in any of them necessarily. I just don't have a too deep of understanding on this. I still have these seems very valid. Everything manifests in consciousness, in your consciousness. And this one, a bit of a materialistic point of view, but all of them are so similar, just very slight differences in them. But to explain that everything manifests in your consciousness, your touch, your sight, your smell, your taste, your hearing, and then if you have a hearing loss, that no longer manifests in your consciousness. Why? Because your equipment of hearing is gone. So therefore it doesn't manifest in your consciousness, and you don't have that. That's something I was trying to think of and how to explain that. I haven't thought of it too much. I definitely need to, but not while watching a video. But I don't know. That's a question that I have in my mind. If you want to help me think about it, much appreciated in the comments.
And the mind generates in its own place, it generates a world, dream world. And I am in the dream world too. I have a body there. And I am experiencing. I meet people, I go to places, I have good and bad experiences, good dreams and nightmares and so on. And all of that is generated by the mind. How do I know? Because when I wake up, I realize I'm in the bed, it all happened in the mind. So that's the dream experience. And then that also shuts down. There's a different kind of sleeping called deep sleep. Vedanta has a unique take on deep sleep. Vedanta says you are not unconscious in deep sleep. You, the same consciousness, you've forgotten your body, which is there on the bed, that's what we assume. The dream world disappears. There's just uniform blankness, darkness. We normally think of it as an unconscious state. But what Vedanta says is, it's not an unconscious state. You are still consciousness. But there is nothing for you to be conscious of. It's like you're driving up those hills in Sedona and you've got this headlights of your car, and in that you see so many things at night. And when you come to the top of a hill, the lights, the beams go out into the darkness of space, and then you don't see the light also, because there's nothing for the light to be reflected of. If there is mist or cloud, you can see two beams of light. But if it's an absolutely clear sky, and when you're on the top of a hill, the two beams of light go out there, you know light is there. If you stopped the car and stepped in front of it, you would see in the blaze of illumination. But you don't see anything. It seems dark. Why? Because there is nothing to reflect the light from. Exactly like that in deep sleep, Advaita holds. You are still this consciousness. But it's not the waking state where you have body and senses to experience a world. It's not even a dream state where the mind generates dreams for you to experience. Consciousness alone remains without anything to experience. So it seems like nothing. There's not even the mind which will say, I am sleeping. If you think I'm sleeping, you're not sleeping. In India, sometimes mothers will check whether little kids are sleeping, and they fake. Kids get hyperactive when it's bedtime. So the mother says, the little boy, good little boy is sleeping, and if he's really asleep, then his left big toe will twitch. And if the left big toe twitches, the mother knows that the little boy is faking it. If you are thinking I'm sleeping, then you are not sleeping. Even the mind shuts down. So there's no thought. That's why you don't feel that I am sleeping. It's a big claim.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of, we can discuss it later also. Is there consciousness in deep sleep? I remember there was a conference on consciousness studies in Calcutta, in one of our centers in Calcutta. It's called the Institute of Culture. And there were professors of philosophy, there were neuroscientists, there were monks, and there was an interesting discussion. But the philosophers of religion and spirituality and the scientists couldn't come together on a definition of consciousness. They still haven't. But, but one of the professors, who's a professor of Sankhya philosophy, is an American, Professor Larson. He asked a question to the neuroscientist, Doctor, in neuroscience, what is the definition of consciousness? Is there consciousness in deep sleep? And the doctor said, no, the way we define consciousness, there is no consciousness in deep sleep. It's an unconscious state. And the philosopher said, well, that's the difference. In Indian philosophy, there is only consciousness in deep sleep. There is no object of consciousness. Actually, you can see that they are coming from two different points of view. One is coming from an objective point of view, one is coming from a subjective point of view. I remember one Swami
He gives a lot of examples. I wanted to say this earlier, which was a very interesting, good Lord, hopefully I didn't forget it, but it was very interesting that the fact that consciousness is pervasive through all of them, even though I've learned that whenever my first reaction of his is of who am I? Interesting that consciousness is pervasive in all three states. And the weird thing is, I wonder if he'll state the fourth state, the Turiya state, number 4, according to what he said. Turiya is number 4, which is the true you, which is the Atman, the Brahman. But, and that's another thing, I have not really watched very many videos in terms of consciousness, because consciousness to me was just merely whether you were aware or unaware. So, in your dream state, you're not aware. You're just merely having a dream. And the only time you're aware is if you're awake. If you're not awake, you're unconscious. But yeah.
Giving a talk about this mandukya in Calcutta University. And he says, then you go into the deep sleep, there is no world, there is no body, there is no mind, consciousness in itself without objects. That's how the Upanishad describes it. And one physiology professor could not take it anymore. He stood up in indignation and he said, what do you mean there is no world and body? You can see that the guy is sleeping on the bed and snoring. There's the body. From your point of view. But from the person's point of view, what is that person's experience? Think back about your deep sleep experience after waking up.
And that's the actual argument I was thinking about the deaf argument I was thinking of. Because and for a deaf person, there's no such thing as sound. But to everyone else that can hear, there is sound. So I'm trying to figure out how to explain that, and that is the example. I mean, I'm sorry, that's not the answer to it, but that is exactly what I'm getting at, and what is the answer to that. From your perspective, you can hear. From the deaf person's perspective, they can't hear. It's very similar. It's just the thing that what your experience as a person who can hear. You can hear it, you're aware of the sound. A deaf person is like a person who's in deep sleep, unaware.
Was it not a blankness? How do you prove that there is consciousness in deep sleep? I'll just touch upon this once and then go ahead. Consider what it is like to be in deep sleep when you wake up and you look back upon it. In every culture in the world, there's a phrase like, I slept happily. You slept like a log? I didn't know it. I was out like a light. Every culture in the world has that. In the most ancient Sanskrit also it's there. Sukham aham aswapsam nakinchid avedisham. I slept happily. I did not know anything. Now where does this come from? If there was no consciousness and no experience in deep sleep, supposing it was nothing, blank. In that case, you know what our report would be when we wake up? I went to sleep.
And I woke up.
I dreamt, part of which I remember, and then I woke up. I would never report that there was a period when I didn't know anything. How do you know that? There was never, I didn't know anything. There was a period of blankness. It's like when I open my eyes, I see. And when I close my eyes, in a sense, I'm still seeing. Right?
I'm wondering I don't like, well, not that I don't want to do this. I'm wondering what he will say to this. There is a way to be aware of how long you've slept. It's the length of time is what gives us the awareness of how long we've been out. So what I'm saying is the fact that when you go to sleep, he's like, oh yeah, I went to sleep. No, well, it's like I closed my eyes, then I opened my eyes, and that was it. Technically speaking, well, not technically speaking, but generally speaking, yeah. I mean, you close your eyes. If you didn't have any dreams, you just wake up your eyes like, oh man, time to go to sleep. I'm so tired. Oh man, felt like I just blinked my eyes. You woke up. But when you look at if you look at surroundings, it's dark. Then daytime, you're like, oh man, it was getting dark. Now it's getting light. If you've never been awake past darkness, assume that you go to sleep at a certain time, but you didn't know about time. So every time this time comes up, whatever time that may be, and then you always wake up at the same time, you don't know any period between those two times, say 9 p.m. till 6 a.m. You always get knocked out at 9 p.m. and always wake up at 6 a.m. You don't know anything about that time frame. Hopefully this is not too complicated. But then imagine that you decided to stay past 9. Then you're aware, it's like, oh my gosh, I never realized it gets this dark. And then just say you stay up for the rest of the day, it's like, oh man, so this is how long it takes for this 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. It's so dark and it takes so long. So now when you go to sleep at 9 p.m. and wake up at 6 a.m., you realize how long you've been out, because you've never done it before. But that one time that you stayed up, you have this feeling, it's like, this is really long. It takes forever for a day to show up, and you realize how long you were out. Only at that moment that you realize it, if you never really measured it or think about it. Hopefully that makes sense. It's very confusing unless you know what my mind is thinking, but I try to explain as best I can.
Right? Your eyes are still working. Absolutely. This is an example. In the same way, you can apply that to consciousness. When there's a world and a body to experience the world with, you are experiencing. When this is erased and there's a dream world, you're still experiencing. And when the dream world is erased, blankness, you're still experiencing blankness. So that awareness, waker and the waker's world, dreamer, the dreamer's world, and the deep sleeper and the deep sleeper's world, according to Vedanta, the claim is they all appear and shine and disappear in the light of one consciousness, which you are. So Vedanta says the essential teaching of the Mandukya Upanishad is this, that we normally think of ourselves as the waker. Who am I? This guy, this body, this life. This is who I am, and that's different from me. That's the world. What Vedanta says, no. You are not the waker. You are not the dreamer. You are not the deep sleeper. They come and go in you. You are the consciousness alone. You are that pure consciousness. You are the fourth. Why fourth? Waker first, dreamer second, deep sleeper third, and fourth. The word in Sanskrit is Turiya. Yes. It's a common word understood in, not very common. You would have to be a little bit of a philosopher in India to have heard that word. But literally the word Turiya, in English Turiya, Turiya, it literally means the fourth. It just means number 4. You are not the first, the waker. Normally we think we are the waker. Think about what it means. If I am consciousness in itself, and the waker, dreamer, and deep sleeper just they are appearances in me. Things appear in my light, in either light, and they disappear also. That light is constant. Then the waker and the waker's problems are not really my problems. I can exist without them. The dream and the nightmare are not really mine. They come and go. What happens in the movie doesn't stick to you. You are the watcher of the movie, not a player in the movie itself. As long as you think you are a character in the movie, then it's a tragedy or a comedy for you. But when you are in the audience, it's all fun, entertainment, it's Hollywood. I ask that when is a catastrophe, when is something horrible, a tragedy, an accident, a tragedy, when is it acceptable? When is it enjoyable? Only when it is Hollywood. When it is art, when it is fiction, when it is a movie, it's a painting, then alone. But if it is real, then you cannot say it's enjoyable. It's horrible. All disease, suffering, murder, whatever it is. If in some sense I am safe, in the audience you are safe, then you can enjoy the show. This show is put up by consciousness, which you are, and consciousness is not harmed by it. Think about it. Forget the fourth, the pure consciousness. Well, don't forget it, but for the time being, set it aside. Even deep sleep. I give this example. A person in, say, New York and in Manhattan dying in Mount Sinai with a huge medical debt and about in an intensive care unit, terrible problems, maybe alone, abandoned, whatever. When that person goes into deep sleep, what problem does that person have? Nothing. From the waker's point of view, you will say, no, it's just because he's forgotten it, how is the problems have gone. But if you see it from the consciousness point of view, the waking world with its promises and problems comes roaring into your consciousness, occupies that space, the movie plays itself out, then disappears. Then comes the dream world with its own experiences. That also goes. Then there's nothing, deep sleep. And this is repeated again and again in the light of that one consciousness which you are. What I'm saying is, you, the consciousness in itself, the real consciousness, the fourth, is absolutely free of problems.
Okay, I'm going to pause right here because it's getting a little long, and I do want to say a few more things. So this is the end of the video if you want to cut it right here. That's a really great way to explain things to Westerners, I'd say. It is very understandable, especially when you talk about the three states. And then the fourth one, which is the consciousness, because I think a lot of people can understand that, you know, the awaker world. Perfectly understandable. Right now it's the waker world. You are in the waker world, unless you're in the dream world or deep sleep world, which would be weird. And then there's the dreamer world, which is easily understandable too. You know, when you go to sleep, you dream, you sometimes remember the dream, sometimes you don't. There's a deep sleep world. That makes sense too, where you're not dreaming, but you're not awake. So you're in a deep sleep world. It makes sense. We're aware of it. We're just not fully aware. We are aware it happens because there's a time frame where we're unaware of something happening. There's a void, in a sense. And then to explain the consciousness that is aware of all of this, it's just that the mind is not flooded with either a dream or all your problems in life. It's filled with nothing. So, that is very interesting. And the one thing I wish you would add, which is something Sadhguru does, is the fact that, oh, you say you're the body, huh? So are you the finger? And he's like, no, I'm not the finger. Then, you know, obviously, if you're not the finger, but the finger is part of the body, then how are you not the finger if you are the body? It's like, okay, so, you know, you're not the body. You know, you can chop, if I chop off that finger and your finger's right there and you say, is that my finger? Would you say that's my finger or is that you? I am the finger. It's like, no, you're pointing at it, so clearly it's not you. The subject, he actually does the subject matter, the I. And then, you know, it goes to, are you the arm? Are you the brain? It's like, you're aware of the thoughts and stuff. So he does explain that. I forget, but I think Sadhguru explains, actually they both explain it pretty well, but I hope he explains it here too. It's another way of pointing out the consciousness from the three states and from the perspective of I am the body, because I wouldn't doubt there's a lot of people out there who believe that they are the body. I did, for the matter of fact. But even though we say that we are the body, when you ask the question, it's like, oh, I'm not the body. Kind of like, you know, so if I cut off your finger, did I cut you off? It's like, no, you cut off my finger. You didn't cut me off. If I cut off your arm, did I cut you off? No, you cut off my arm, not me. So we're all, in a sense, aware that the fact that we are not the body, but I think most people never really thought about it, so they think they are the body. And that's what, I guess, what Advaita Vedanta and what Sadhguru teaches. The fact is that obviousness that we all should be aware of and kind of aware of, but not. And that's probably the veil of Maya right there. Anyways, that's part one. This is probably going to be in 3 parts, not sure. But if you like my content, please consider subscribing, thumbs up, thumbs down below. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next vid.